Right, good morning everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm going to be talking about making sustainability invisible. And I'm going to start by just going through a little bit of context about why we need to make it invisible. And I don't mean make it disappear. I mean make it so intertwined in the delivery of good projects and not treated as a separate thing that can be stripped out. So firstly, globally, you'll all be aware of this, the sentiment around sustainability has really changed in the last year or so. Ambition has scaled back in many cases, sustainability initiatives have been paused, and many sustainability professionals have lost their jobs. Businesses are dealing with immediate cost pressures. They're investing in priorities like cybersecurity and AI transition, and sustainability has taken a back seat in many cases. You'll see this slide on the screen, and many of you might be familiar with this because it went viral on LinkedIn and other platforms. This is the sustainability maturity curve, and it was produced by Be Serious. And it shows the rapid increase in commitments and expectations on sustainability that we had a few years ago. And then this downward slope with ESG budgets being slashed, people questioning the return on investment. And Be Serious have termed this trough at the bottom, the trough of disillusionment. And many of us still feel like we're there, we're down that slope in the middle, not sure what's going to happen. But I like this slide because it does show that there's hope. And I feel like I'm on that slope of enlightenment, but with a big shot of realism because things are different now. So, despite this drop in motivation, the need for sustainable solutions is as important as ever. You'll all be aware of the big stats globally. Carbon emissions are still rising. Extreme weather events are becoming more frequent and disruptive. And we've got stark socioeconomic challenges, inequality, social distrust, health disparities. And those pressures might ebb and flow, but the underlying need for more resilient, low carbon, people-centered projects and products hasn't gone away. And so just when we need more sustainable projects, they're becoming harder to deliver and harder to get the buy-in for. And that's exactly why we need a different approach. So then we have projects and project managers, you, the audience for today. You're under constant pressure to deliver on time, on budget, and meet quality requirements, and that juggle, that balancing act between many competing requirements. And in that context, sustainability is often treated as an additional extra, a nice to have, something that sits outside of the core objectives of a project. And then it very easily becomes a separate strategy, a separate business case, a separate set of performance criteria. And once it's separate, it is so vulnerable to being deprioritized or stripped out altogether. And it's also viewed as being extra work or extra cost. And we're seeing resistance, we're seeing fatigue. And look, the core responsibilities of project managers remain. But what I'm seeing is the scope of your influence changing. You are an enabler. You connect dots. You can help project stakeholders take that longer term view, a broader view, and you can create the conditions for better projects, better products. And Edoardo will talk more about the emerging role of the project manager in his talk after mine, so I won't dwell on that. So there's a little bit about why we need to make sustainability invisible and why we need to change our approach. Right, let's move on to a bit of the how. So let me bring this to screen. Here we go. Right, how can project managers make sustainability invisible? Absolutely integrated. I'm going to run through 3 key points. I'm trying to keep it to 3 so it can be memorable. The first one I'm going to talk about is how we can reframe the language, shift the positioning of it so that sustainability shows up as efficiency, risk reduction, resilience. I'll go through that in a moment. Then I'm going to talk about how we can embed it more than ever, weave it into the core process so it's not an optional layer, but just absolutely part of the objectives of the project and how the projects run. And then the final one is going to be about how we can just make it the better choice, make it more appealing and better for users that also happen to be sustainable. So let's go through the first one, reframe it. I want to look at the language we use in projects and the way that sustainability professionals often use very technical terms that don't land well enough. And sustainability can often be interpreted as being purely about environmental or social topics, but it's so much more than that. So technical terms we often hear that can feel quite abstract to people who aren't familiar with them or don't care about them. Net zero carbon, circular economy, climate resilience, social value. These are all important concepts, but not the language of day-to-day delivery. And it makes them feel like nice to have, something to benefit people in the future, not the here and now. But when you strip it back, many sustainability concepts are really just about good project outcomes expressed differently. So we need to shift the language into more project management terminology, as I mentioned, risk, efficiency, program certainty, quality, user experience. Because in our current times, if something is pitched as being purely an environmental benefit, it is much less likely to be delivered. So we have to make those links to delivery and performance and user experience unmistakable. And on the point of language and reframing, people respond far more strongly to human-centered benefits, safer, more reliable, healthier, more comfortable than to that abstract environmental language. And when we talk in those sort of human terms, sustainability stops feeling like an add-on and it just feels like common sense. So as an example, instead of talking about climate resilience, let's talk about flood risk, protecting homes and businesses from flooding, making it grounded in project management terminology, people-related terminology. Instead of net zero carbon, let's talk about lower operating costs, energy security, reduced exposure to energy price volatility, future-proofed assets, and stronger planning and investor confidence. So actively challenge your sustainability consultants and other colleagues to make the links with the project management priorities and ask them to make those links explicit, but help them reframe what they're trying to achieve in those terms so it lands better and is more likely to get support and be delivered. Because once that language aligns, it gets integrated quietly and effectively into those everyday decisions. And look, we'll get better projects, better products. The second one I'm going to go on to is embed it. We've done the first how, which is about reframe it. Now let's look at how we can embed it. So for many years, I have advocated for sustainability to be included as a discrete item, an explicit item in project briefs section, project processes, separate line item, reporting. So I've advocated for it to be its own separate thing, so it's so visible that people can't ignore it. And part of me thinks that is still beneficial, but there is another part, a new emerging part, that thinks that we need to do something different, because by embedding it, making it too explicit, it just creates the opportunity for it to be treated separately, ignored, or stripped out. So I think what we actually need to do is embed it in core processes, briefing, governance, design, risk management, whatever it might be. So it's not an optional layer, but absolutely intertwined and invisible. And increasingly with my clients, a lot of which are major infrastructure clients or construction companies, I'm starting to see this shift. I'm having conversations about not having separate, let's say, sustainable design guidance, but having it in absolutely embedded in and intertwined. So I'm going to show you one slide here to illustrate my point. Let's move this on. Right. What I've got here, I'm sorry to bring up a boring table, but I just wanted to show you the difference between what's been happening. Sort of, I've got the first column pre-2025, the next one, the kind of the last 20 years or so, 2005 to 2025, where sustainability has been included as a discrete item, and then what might happen in the future. So let's go along some of them. Right, let's start with a brief for a project. So pre-2005, absent, just wasn't a thing. It wasn't included. Last 20 years, it has been a separate sustainability section, but often trying to achieve too much. It's a huge, great list of things, and it overwhelms people, and they just feel like it's unmanageable. So what might the 2025 plus version look like, where it's invisible and absolutely part of the DNA, part of business as usual? Well, it's just embedded in the core project objectives and performance criteria using the language that I described above. And it's really focused on the highest impact opportunities, not trying to do everything, but much more focused. Let's go on to risk management. It wasn't included pre-2005. We then had maybe a whole separate section on sustainability. What might the 2025 plus version look like? It's just integrated into those mainstream risks, flood risk, energy volatility, supply chain resilience, etc. And then the final one is about project culture. So it used to just be absent. It wasn't really a topic or a thing. And now what we've seen in the last 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, many committed leaders and practitioners, but still regarded as a nice to have a lot of the time, and often viewed as that separate layer. So how can we take that cultural shift to just being part of everyday delivery, part of delivering good projects, better projects? And as well as embedding it in core processes, we need to build that capability and the confidence across teams, so sustainability decisions can happen quietly at every level, not just through the sustainability benefits. Right, let's move on to the last how, which is about making it the better choice. What we need to do is ensure that the sustainable project or product is better than previous alternatives or precedents across a wide range of metrics, so that people want to buy it, want to support it, and we might come out of that trough of disillusionment and get back up that slope. So it needs to have a great user experience. People need to love the product, want to live in that sustainable low carbon neighborhood, want to work in the low carbon building, use the new train link, and businesses want to be associated it and pay to put their branding on it. Then they'll start to feel more positive about solutions that have got sustainability benefits, because they're just better. And we can already see what better looks like in practice. I'm going to give you 3 quick examples before I wrap up my intro talk. So I've tried to make these quite simplistic and not verge too much into infrastructure and regeneration projects and construction, which is where I do a lot of my work. I'm hoping these very simple examples will be relatable to everyone. So LED lights, I know it's used often as an example, but everybody gets it. LED lights are a better light alternative, as well as consuming less energy and emitting less carbon emissions. But what's been brilliant is that they can be integrated with smart home tech. You can change the colour. My kids love doing that. Turn the room purple. They can control them with their voice or your phone, and energy savings are a bonus. So it's part of this exciting technology smart home transition. Electric vehicles. Next example, they aren't just lower carbon than fossil fuel cars. They're cheaper to run, and they've got design features and technology that delight. They're being able to warm up your car remotely before you get in it on a frosty winter morning. Yes, please, I'd love that. And let's take the final example of energy efficient buildings. So they don't just cut carbon, they create modernised and desirable places that attract business tenants. They've got lower operating costs, and they create a higher value building, and it won't be a stranded asset in the future that can't be sold, and you won't get your your return on investment. So that's where sustainability and commercial sense align. Okay, so let's wrap this up. In the context that we're working in right now, globally, politically, economically, with the mood around sustainability dropping, we have got to work much harder to achieve environmental and social outcomes, and we need to make sustainability invisible. I heard this term quite a lot recently, sustainability by stealth. Not to make it disappear or not do it, just make it so embedded and linked to things that people do care about. So if we can reframe the language, embed it in the core process, and make the sustainable option the better option, then I think we stand a chance. And that's when it stops becoming an add-on and becomes something you can't imagine delivering a project without. And the crucial point is that you, as project managers, are uniquely positioned to make this shift happen. You can help shape decisions, influence priorities, and create those right conditions. So please help us make better projects, better products, better organisations, and let's get these environmental and social outcomes absolutely invisibly embedded. Thank you very much.
Great. Hi, thanks, Jo. That was brilliant and very much to time, which is very good. I'm going to call Edoardo to the stage in a minute, but before I do, I just had wanted to prompt Jo with a question to think about while Edoardo's speaking. To my mind, one of the things about one of the most stealthy tools we have in our armory now is AI. And I wondered if Jo had any thoughts about how you might use AI, or how people are using AI as a prompt for organizations, to remind them and to kind of be that little Jiminy Cricket in their ear about sustainability. You don't need to respond to that now, Jo. I'll leave you with that thought, and we can come back to it once Edoardo's done his bit. So good. So Edoardo, will you join me on the stage? Fantastic.
Hello, everybody.
Fantastic. Good. You're going to introduce us to the world of metaphors, and specifically to the idea of gardening. So I'll leave you to it.
Thank you, Jonathan. As Jonathan said, today I'm going to present you the importance of metaphors in addressing our everyday challenges as project managers. Can you see? Sorry. Can you see the screen? My screen? Oh. Okay. Done. Picking up from what Jo highlighted so clearly just a few moments ago, the global mood around sustainability has shifted. Ambition has softened, enthusiasm has decreased, even if paradoxically the need for sustainable projects has never been more urgent. So this tension, the gap between what we need and what teams feel able to deliver, is exactly why today I want to talk to you about metaphors. Not just a linguistic decoration or a game for children, but as powerful lenses that shape the way we think, decide, lead, and ultimately transform the world through our projects. The very famous George Lakoff showed that metaphors are not simply about language. They structure our cognition. They quietly shape how we understand reality, how we interpret complexity, and how we make decisions. And this is crucial in today's context, because when sustainability risks being sidelined or treated as extra work, the metaphor we use can either reinforce the mindset or unlock entirely new possibilities. Let's borrow some example from Lakoff. If we describe time as money, we start treating time as a scarce resource to be spent, saved, or wasted. Moreover, if if we speak of meetings with the customer as war, we enter the discussion expecting to attack, defend, or win, rather than to explore or understand each other. When we frame a company as a family, our business choices shift depending on whether we imagine a strict father or a nurturing parent. If we depict our company as an army, on the other hand, our choices will be different. Metaphors guide us long before we realize it. They highlight certain possibilities while hiding others. They tell us what to pay attention to and what to ignore. And the same is true in project management. For decades, project managers have been described using familiar and comforting metaphors. The ship captain steering through storms, or the orchestra conductor harmonizing a complex ensemble. These metaphors made sense, also that we can consider that anyway in some cases, but they are especially meaningful in stable, predictable, linear environments. But as Joe reminded us, the world has changed. We are no longer navigating calm seas or conducting well-scored symphonies. We are operating in complex, interdependent, evolving ecosystem facing unprecedented global challenges. In this world, new metaphors are needed. Metaphors that help us reframe sustainability not as a burden, not as an add-on, but as something woven into the very logic of project delivery. So what I'm doing now, with some colleague, we are doing a research to see what is the feeling of the community. We already ran 3 focus groups with 20 project leaders from all continents, with an average seniority of 20 years. That is quite a lot. Asking to describe, very roughly speaking, the role of the project manager today compared with the one of 10 or 20 years ago. And we analyzed the results. And the 7 traits that clearly emerged are those listed here. The value-driven leadership. Project success is no longer defined solely by the iron triangle, but the responsibility is broadening toward sustainability and strategic alignment. The facilitation and empowerment as key traits, moving away from the command and control leadership. And the identity of the facilitator is linked to trust, to co-creation, and shared accountability. Adaptivity and agility, because change and uncertainty are always described as an unavoidable feature of today's project. And cultivating adaptability through contingency planning, flexible mindset, and iterative practice is essential. Agility is not longer seen as a methodology. It's a cultural and strategic orientation. Trust and psychological safety also is always mentioned. The participants of our focus groups linked the effective leadership to transparency, openness, and creating safe environment where risk can be discussed without fear. Trust is regarded as a kind of a universal currency across organization and cultural boundaries. Stakeholder engagement and co-creation, involving stakeholders in shaping outcomes rather than presenting plans for approval. And the cultural and emotional intelligence becomes essential given that the global nature of contemporary projects, because even if your project is local, is linked outside, globally in some sense. So participants are stressing the need for cultural sensitivity and emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence is seen as critical in maintaining alignment in diverse contexts. And not least, technology awareness and AI integration, because the contemporary project manager is expected to be digitally literate and mindful of both the benefits and the risk of emerging tools. So this is what emerged. I think that all of us participating to this conference agree with these findings. So at the end, we need to look for a metaphor that that must cover these features. So I already anticipated. This is still an assumption. No, we are not. We are working to validate the fact that actually the metaphor we should inspire to is the gardener. No, not because it's romantic, but it's very contemporary. It is resilient. It is sustainable. No? A good metaphor for our new context in the sustainable project management must include, in my opinion, at least 3 core dimensions. The long time horizon, one that includes future generations. No? And a garden, if you think about it, is never finished, no? And always evolving. So we plant today shapes what other will inherit tomorrow. Another point, a wide and diverse stakeholder ecosystem. A garden interacts with birds, insects, microorganisms, and neighbors, and weather patterns, and unforeseen ecological forces. So the same is true for our modern projects. And third, the value that goes beyond the deliverables and beyond the project end. And in the garden, flowers and fruits matter, no? Today. But so does also soil fertility, biodiversity, and the ability to generate. If you plant the seed of a flower today, you get the bloom, no? The immediate outcome. But you also get bees and butterflies and honey, and you activate a wood ecosystem at the same cost. In contrast, we think the ship captain leads for the duration of the voyage, and the conductor performs for the duration of the concert exactly as it's written in the sheet music. But a gardener works not only for today's harvest, but also for tomorrow's fertility. Obviously, we can consider other metaphors, but it seems that the most promising is the gardener. So, my personal feeling, what are the principles of project gardening? We are working on this. The first, respect the ecosystem, a sensitivity to the unique context of each project. Culture, constraints, stakeholder system. Just as a gardener studies the soil, the microclimate, the local biodiversity, the sustainable project manager seeks to understand before acting. No one fits for all garden, and similarly, no one fits for all project. Cultivate with care, supportive human-centered leadership, individualized attention to team and stakeholder well-being. Gardening is an act of care, watering, nurturing, pruning, sensitivity. In sustainable project management, people are not just resources, they are living contributors. Adapt with the season, comfort with uncertainty and change, flexible, responsive planning and execution. Gardens teach us that nothing is entirely predictable. Storm come, drought arrives. Likewise, the sustainable project manager embrace agility, resilience, and learning in real time. Get your hands dirty, grounded, hands-on leadership, modeling engagement and shared ownership with the team. A gardener does not manage from the office. They kneel in the soil. So sustainable project leaders participate, collaborate, and embody the work alongside their teams, and balance beauty with pragmatism. I feel it's very important, this one, pursuit of long-term value, balancing social, environmental, and economic dimension of the present. You need this year harvest to let your project sustain future generation. In the end, financial health is what keeps the project running, scaling, and evolving. Projects that focus exclusively on environmental and social sustainability goals without considering the financial aspect risk becoming unsustainable themselves. The art is in the balance. And the same is true for sustainable project management. So in conclusion, as Joe reminded us earlier, sustainability will only succeed when it becomes invisible, not an add-on, not a separate work stream, but a natural part of how good projects are conceived, delivered, and valued. The garden metaphor, I think, helps us to exactly do that. It invites us to think, to care for ecosystem, to nurture people, and to create conditions where value can grow well beyond the life of any single initiative. So let us stop imagining ourselves as a captain guiding a single voyage or a conductor directing a single performance. Let us instead step into the mindset of the gardener, cultivator of resilience, steward of the future, and quite enablers of sustainable success. Let's make our project bloom. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Edoardo. That was really, really lovely. You're psychic, I think, because when we come to our next speaker shortly, Phil Driver, you'll see that one of the things that he's been doing for the last few years has been to develop a half-hectare food forest based on permaculture principles. So he's somebody who is very literally gardening and understanding sustainability through gardening. So if Joe would like to join us back on the stage as well, and then we can have a conversation and we can share some of the questions that we've got. Welcome back, Joe.
Thank you very much.
I'll kind of start with that your homework, that question I planted with you, this idea of AI. What are your thoughts on using AI in terms of helping with this, embedding sustainability, making it invisible?
Oh, I think it can help in many ways, actually. I mean, wouldn't it be brilliant if you could just have AI as your little kind of social or environmental conscious on the side, kind of helping you make decisions, challenge your thinking, be that almost like a little governance and values sort of driven not a person, but an extra part of your team who can just make sure that you're doing things in the right way. And I like to think we could use it to test different scenarios as well in a safe environment. And to be able to, I would like to see more about how we can use it to help shift the language as well. We could probably absolutely create a prompt to be able to say, right, I'm currently communicating sustainability in these ways. Can you help me shift it and frame it in more kind of project management terms? But yeah, what do you think, Jonathan?
No, I think because we can train our AI and we build our LLMs, I mean, you could front load your AI with information about sustainability, your aspirations within the project. So it is there as a conscience, and you could kind of frame your decisions and share your decisions with the AI and say, how does this work? What opportunities might there be given the original sustainability requirements we put in? Are we indeed sticking to what we aspire to stick to? So I think it'd be interesting to see if organizations actually do that. Edoardo, I wanted to ask you a very practical question, because I did love your metaphor, and I'm a strong believer in metaphors as a way of communicating very complex ideas in a very simple, human, intuitive way. Have you thought about how you might use a metaphor, whether it's gardening or whatever? How can you use metaphors in terms of guiding choices and decisions within projects? So when you're actually running the projects and you've been thinking of metaphorically about your project, can you really use it to help frame those decisions?
Definitely. No, as you said, Jonathan, metaphors are good because they can represent a similar complex situation, and using the metaphor, we can lead the way we see reality, no? And we make decisions. For example, if your mindset is more, if you feel yourself as a captain, probably your leadership will be framed in a more directive way. You are the boss. You are the boss. So if you feel yourself like that, you are, your decisions will be authoritarian, probably, more or less, but it happens. A ship is not a democracy. So if you think to manage your project like a captain manage a ship, your approach will be like that. On the other hand, for example, the gardener, the metaphor that I am advocating, but there are many that you can use and fruitfully use. If you are the gardener, for example, you know very well that you cannot direct your tree to bloom tomorrow, because you have to let them take their season. Okay, so you cannot force. So in this way, the decision making is different just because you embed your perception, your idea of yourself and of the environment as a garden and a gardener instead of being the captain and the ship. Things like that happen. It is very surprising. I am an engineer, so very supposed to be very pragmatic. Decision making is not mechanics. Maybe as an engineer, I could expect at the beginning of my career to have a way to be perfectly logic in decision making. It's not like that. Now we are humans. Now we are not purely logic. So we need also soft part of our soul, to be fed. And metaphors works in that. So it's part. It's not the panacea. It's not the thing good for everything. But choosing our good metaphors can really change the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so it allows you, if you're going down a rabbit hole, here's a metaphor. If you're going down a rabbit hole, it really allows you to step back and to get an entirely different perspective, because it's very easy to become, I think it's very easy to become blinkered on a project because you're so focused on driving the thing forward. So that's really interesting. Joe, I had a really interesting question from Hugo, and he said, he's asking whether you're saying that we should have been doing sustainability all along, and suggesting that actually maybe the non-sustainability of our activities is fairly recent thing, and are there things that we can look to in past cultures, in past centuries, where we were actually much more connected with sustainability and with the idea of balance and nature?
Yeah, it's a really great question, because it does come back to that historical kind of point of view. We wanted successful civilizations. We wanted to create fantastic cities and develop the way that we had new products that work for people and want to be products that people use, places that people want to live in. So, but I think we have actually been trying to sort of, do it all along. And I think it just comes back to the way that we've sort of framed it and talked about it. And definitely, I mean, Hugo made the point about getting sort of focused on short-term profit. I think that short-term attitude and having to deal with issues in the here and now has often meant that some of those kind of longer-term objectives and broader socio-economic, environmental impacts have sort of taken a back seat. But I do think it's in us. I do think it's in our core kind of can't think of the word right now, but I think it is in human DNA almost to try and make things better and continually improve. But yeah, be pleased to hear your thoughts. Edoardo, do you have any thoughts on that one? Should we have been doing it all along, using these metaphors all along?
But also, it again, it depends on your perspective you have on it. The metaphors should be something. The metaphor you use should be something that allow continuous improvement, of where we are. the metaphor, no, and of war, for example, is very present, not only in management, no, in organization, but you feel, no, today I have a very hard discussion with this customer, will be a war, no. If you go with this metaphor in your mind, probably would be even worse, no. Also, different cultures have different approaches in relationship. For example, in Japan, no, it's more and more common coming to meetings looking for building a co-created solution, no? Mm-hmm. Instead, in the Western culture, no, it's more common to have an already cooked idea and defending it, no, and trying to prevail. This is in our background, can be even linked to metaphors use. So also for environment, no, the same. We should look for having embedded an idea of what is environment is where we live, and our children will live in the future. Having this awareness is essential. For example, in the metaphor of the garden, you need this year harvest, but you also can compromise tomorrow fertility. No, what can happen in agriculture, for example, you can exploit that much with fertilizers. No, a field, and tomorrow it's no longer fertile. We need to balance them, and good metaphors, background embedded metaphors can help in that, in my opinion.
Very interesting. Yeah. I mean, I wondered about reporting and controls, and I mean, Joe, you talk about language, and Edoardo, you talk about visual language, if you like. And I wondered, I mean, I'm thinking back to the old days. When you'd be wandering through a village, and you'd see that the church was trying to gather funds for its roof or its spire, and there was a little here you can see where we are. Are there things that we could use to illustrate in large projects that could tell the story of sustainable progress in using, as you say it, Joe, a much more human-centric form of language, rather than just in terms of tons of CO2 or whatever it is, that we could actually create a rich picture of how the project is doing, and perhaps connect a lot of the different aspects of sustainability, because often there it might be down to how you affect the use of diesel on site, how you're using sustainable energy, all of it's lots of different bits and pieces. How do we put them together to create a whole story in your words, Joe, and to create a whole metaphor in yours, Edoardo?
Yeah, I mean, I really agree with that point. I've been talking to some of my clients recently about even a simple case study that talks about what's been achieved on the project, just adapting the language and improving the storytelling and making the links with things that people care about, and also drawing out the cost savings, the program benefits, the local community, and to be able to get things like quotes, from people who have benefited from that project, local communities, and someone who got an apprenticeship and then has now got a proper job and has moved out of home and can actually get their sort of life going, to be able to have that qualitative storytelling, in addition to things like, we had 5 apprenticeships on this project. We've got to shift to more human-related storytelling and the benefits that it brings to people. So yes, absolutely, I think it's important, and we probably all need training in it. Actually, it's a discipline and an art to be able to do it effectively. And I think that would be a really good addition. And I'll stop there. Keep going.
It's essential, the narrative you provide. And in particular, today we are very focused on the reporting that and you must have a metric, and the metrics are KPIs, and KPIs are very synthetic. No? So KPIs, metrics are essential. We need them, and we need to measure what we do. So KPIs are fine. On the other hand, KPIs kill complexity, no? Because we have the number that makes perfectly sense. On the other hand, there is much more. No? Today, I see so many managers focused on KPIs. No, I want to manage the company just using KPIs. You need KPIs, but in parallel, you need to understand the complexity. So what can we do? No, gets your hand dirty. Now the principle that I mentioned. No, you need to understand, to see the complexity. If you are completely remotely, you don't know people working in the project. Probably you don't see the complexity, and your decision probably are not the best possible. Sometimes it is said that we should have a kind of OKRs, that are the high level elements instead of having strict KPIs. Could be a thing that we can consider. But for sure, having at the end, if you have KPIs, you always have the financial KPIs. And if you use the financial KPIs, no way if your project lasts for 10 years, a very, very long progress, you have the quarterly closing of your financials. So this kills sustainability, in my opinion. So it is essential. We need to measure wisely, so having some way to balance the need for measuring with the understanding of the context and of the complexity.
Yeah, that's so true. The Transport for London recently did a review following the launch of the Elizabeth line, Crossrail as was, and the Elizabeth line. And they were reporting on progress and what they'd achieved since. And it was steadfastly very tangible forms of progress or metrics, which are fine, but which they struggle to articulate some of these other sources of value, the social value, the environmental value, because we don't have accepted metrics for kind of for these things. So I think that's really true. I mean, I'm going to hand back to Mervyn just a minute, but I wanted to kind of finish with perhaps a challenge. I thought it would be lovely for perhaps PMI to do this, to actually create and enable people to co-create a mosaic of metaphors, so that you could go to the website and here are 15 different metaphors that people have created, and you could choose one, or it might help prompt you in developing your own metaphor. I think that would be fun, and that would be something very tangible that we could do and very easy to do. So great stuff. Well, thank you both very much. I've really enjoyed myself, and I hope that the audience have. I'm looking at the sort of comments and the positive feedback. I think we're doing well as a starter. So thank you both.
Really enjoyed
the rest of the day. And Merv, if you'd like to come back on screen, and we can then prepare for the next track.